Hello, I'm Josh Baer, and welcome to the Baer Faxt Podcast. In this episode, we continue our conversation with former hedge fund manager and renowned art collector Adam Sender, which we recorded at his home during Miami Art Week. In the second half of our conversation, Adam opened up to us about what led to his decision to place a large portion of his collection for sale at auction, and how the years since have spurred his own personal growth and his feelings on the art world in general from the outside looking in. Note this is part two, a special two-part episode of the Baer Faxt Podcast, so make sure to check out part one, it was great, which is available on all platforms if you haven't already. So let's get to it with the second half of this conversation. Once again, this episode is brought to you by Arthur Analytics, the only platform you need to mastering the art of collecting. With a new year comes new opportunities for collectors, and there's no better tool for taking advantage of them than Arthur Analytics. I just did a walkthrough on the site that's launching soon, and man, my feeling was, wow, it's a game changer. So it's available on the web, on your phone, kind of like an all Swiss Army knife tool for collecting, using data, great interface, AI, all the stuff that gives you the tools to collect like a pro from anywhere in the world. They've given our listeners a free trial, no commitment required, at arthuranalytics.com/BaerFaxt. Check it out, dudes. So then all of a sudden it's like, Phillips is coming up with the Sender collection. That was quite a shock to the system.
The first time was Phillips. But Phillips. You're right. And that was a little bit of a panic after, getting sued for $7 billion.
So what year was that?
I'm pretty sure that was late 2006, early 2007.
I remember they were down on 14th Street.
Yeah.
I remember saying oh my God, there's this Damien Hirst of this fish tank with a gynecology chair. And I'm like, holy shit. That was one of the best pieces I've ever seen.
That was actually...
Was that not in that sale?
No. So...
I'm just old. I forget shit.
And I actually do still have that piece in the Hamptons, and Love Lost, the twin pieces is in Milan at the Prada collection. And Larry had it. And
Larry means Larry Gagosian for all you sports fans.
And, I guess Saatchi was selling it, and Larry wanted a fortune of money for it. And I was just like, I'm not going to pay that. And not only that, looking back on it and now knowing what I know, this is not a painting that you hang on the wall and you forget about. My guys have to drain the tank, go in waders, scrub all the algae off of the piece every couple of months.
I remember one of my clients saying, do we always have to buy the most difficult stuff that's impossible to do, that you have to take the windows out and winch it up and do that? And I said, yeah, you got to do that. And they went, oh, okay. But it's it's a beast.
But what happened was, so after that, they put it up for sale at Phillips. And you're right, you did see it at Phillips, but that wasn't me selling it. That was Saatchi selling it. I think we bought it for maybe $700,000 at Phillips. It gets taken down. It gets put away. I don't see it for years and years and years and years. And, when you have 1,100 pieces, you have a lot of pieces in storage that you've never actually seen. I finally decide, okay, I'd like to actually live with this piece and install this piece.
Isn't that the point?
We open it up, destroyed. It was not taken apart properly, and the mold and the piece was completely destroyed. So we had to give it back to Damien, spend God only knows what we spent to restore it, have him redo the piece. And now I'm living with it and loving it, but it's not an easy piece.
Before we get back to the Phillips sale, I do remember there's another collector you didn't mention who was part of that same circle, David Gannick.
I worked with David for a tiny bit of time at SAC.
So I'm at Phillips one day for the night sale, and there's this Richard Prince painting that comes up, and I see that David buys it. I think it was
$700,000. It was a big deal. And we're walking on the sale and I say, David, I used to own the drawing for that painting. He goes, really? What'd you pay for it? I said, 12. And he goes, 12,000? I said, no, David, 12. He goes, 1,200? I said, you're still not listening. I own that drawing for $12. Wow. And he looked at me a little bit like shell-shocked, but I'm sure that painting's worth quite a bit now, more than the drawing I sold for like 100x. So I pay some debts, but it was like, I bought my first 2 Richard Princes. I bought 2 of them for $12 each from 303. And I think I probably got, terms of how to pay.
Yeah.
And Richard tells that story in like an article in Vanity Fair that Josh Baer bought these 2 drawings for like $12 each.
I mean, we were buying at auction. You could buy great joke paintings for under $100,000.
$12 for a joke drawing?
Yes, that is obviously better than that.
Yes.
But, these paintings, they go for, 2, 3, 4 million bucks now?
They're great. See, so looking back in history, so we tend to maybe misremember things. So we remember the big controversy about this big grouping. It wasn't probably that big, but it seemed big at the time.
Yep.
Coming up for Phillips. And the word on the street was like, oh man, that guy, he went back to the dealers and he gave them like 10 minutes to buy this thing or it was going to auction.
Yep.
What's the true story?
I don't overly remember, exactly what happened, to be honest with you, but I certainly think there was a bit of a panic because I had spent so much money, for the previous 7 years. And then I was staring down this lawsuit that made sense to maybe cull a couple of things just to take a little bit off the table. But in hindsight, I think that was a mistake because it really missed the bigger picture of what we were trying to do. And then I look and I see I was spending, even though I did sell these pieces at auction.
You kept spending.
I told you, once I finally started doing really well again, I just started buying again. So there was I don't know, maybe self-doubt, maybe just the recession combined with the lawsuit. I think we hit the panic button, but this was a group decision. And when I say a group decision, I mean me and Todd. Todd got 10% of that whole entire sale. So anybody thinking that this was just me selling it without, and he didn't want to, that's
well,
not
I think
true.
there's still to this day, we've gotten these resale agreements and you have to go back to the gallery. And I find that they don't do a very good job of reselling people's artwork, even though they
don't have as much of an incentive unless their percentage is massive. So,
well, not only that, they're not aligned. When you're selling it, I went through this with a very close friend who bought something from what she thought was her closest friend at a gallery. And they told her, oh, you could get like $50,000 for it. It was like a Jim Hodges. And I said, it's worth 200. And she went, what? I said, because your friend is not interested in you as the seller. They're interested in making nice with the buyer. And they're not so aligned in general. So even today, it's problematic.
100%. So, an interesting fun fact, like the Richard Phillips that you saw out there, in that sale, they wanted to guarantee me $1 million for that painting.
Which is now worth, what, 50 grand?
I don't even know, but that would probably be about right. And I tried to keep the pieces that I liked, but, in honesty, I effed up.
So we'll come to today a little bit, but jumping ahead, when you collect and you get resale agreements, do you sign them?
Well, I'm not, as I said, I probably have about 200 and some pieces. And, some of them are worth nothing. Some of them are like you saw upstairs, my Gursky. At the peak, that Gursky was a $500,000 million. That was one of the better pieces. I think in that sale, I had the 99-cent diptych of the Gursky. And I don't know if I hit the record on Gursky in that sale, but I think I came pretty
later,
close.
the one Ryan made $6 million.
Oh, really? Okay.
We can go offline for you to buy my Gursky diptych that I bought that's of North Korea. It's like, what am I thinking? Like, it's a masterwork. I can't fit in my house. I can't fit in my office. his market is weird.
Yeah.
But he's a great artist.
I think he's a great artist.
You want to buy mine?
I think that's one of the disappointing things about the art world today is the painting only trophy hunting type of mentality that's out there versus like at the turn of the century.
Which century?
The 21st century,
21st century.
2000, like going into the 21st century, video art, photography, all these things that I thought were exciting that, I don't know, do people buy Bill Viola anymore? It's incredible, but there's a lot of these great artists that, people don't care about anymore. And I find it, and even photography,
Well, let me ask you a different question. I was talking to somebody the other day. It's like an artist that you missed. I'm not saying market-wise. It's like, guy can say, for a long time, I didn't get care of James Marshall. And I've done a lot in that field. And I whiffed on it. And then one day I saw a big show and then showed the Met and Mocha. I went, man, I miss that. Is there somebody that you didn't understand the work and now you went, oh.
Early on, I don't know where Murakami's market is today, but I could have easily bought, Murakami with Marianne back in the day. And
those big, crazy
Todd,
sculptures.
And I came really close. And Todd, he just didn't like it. And even the Nara stuff, I had good Nara and I got swayed by him. And obviously that was a bad decision, but
it wasn't a bad decision. It was like,
well, it was a bad monetary decision.
Right. But I'm not really asking that. I'm saying you just didn't feel the art, maybe.
I like the Murakami. That was a mistake. I should
because you felt it and didn't do it.
I did, yeah. And I kind of got that. So like even Keith Haring, like early on, it was obvious to me that he was really undervalued compared to like a Warhol or a Basquiat and really not getting his due.
So the flip side is, what did you think back then that was great? Now you're looking back with the luxury of Monday morning quarterbacking and go, I live with that because that's one of the great things about collecting art is you see it every day.
Yep.
And sometimes they get better.
Yep.
And sometimes they don't.
I think you alluded to it before. And even though I was spending a ton of money, I had a limited budget. I wasn't a billionaire. So there were always pieces that were outside of what I could really afford.
Was it because, I would never spend $1 million, but I'd spend $200,000 5 times? That happens to people.
Well, that too, but I was buying in depth and I could have done what you're talking about where I could have been like, okay, instead of buying 10 Richard Princes, I'm going to buy the best Gober. I'm going to buy the best Judd. I'm going to buy the best of this, the best of that. And like Koons, I know Koons' market is a little challenged right now, but the earlier stuff, I sent you the picture of that vacuum cleaner that I thought was amazing. I wish I could go back and get a record of all the pieces that I was the underbidder, during that whole period of time. Because there was a ton of things that I came really close, amazing things that I didn't get. But I think, to answer your question, I think it was just that there were things that were always like a Gober sink. I never got one of those. Like I had a Judd floor piece, but I never had a stack that I really wanted. Basquiat was already way too much money. Good Warhols were already way too much money. So I had to be choosy.
Keep listening to hear the conclusion of our conversation with Adam Sender, where Sender shares how he'd approach building a new collection from scratch, the differences he's noticed between the markets of today and yesteryear, and what he's looking forward to in life as we enter 2025. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this message.
Arthur Analytics is your single pane of glass for following the art world. Sounds great. I think I know what that means. Now we're all coming back to work with inboxes full from the holiday season, and there's a lot of noise to cut through. But if you use their advanced search functionality, you can catch up faster than any other place in the competition with the latest news, critical reviews, sales, trend data, with interactive maps from over 500 cities around the world. Stop digging around your inbox to see all these openings. You can do it all in one place with Arthur Analytics. They take all the grunt work and guesswork out of art collecting, so go check them out at arthuranalytics.com/BaerFax.
And now, fast forward, you're still collecting. Well, you haven't even gone through like round 2 of selling, but you had a big evening sale and day sale at Sotheby's. Remember, President Obama was in town. Your sale started at 6:30, and they started putting on a dance performance of like Paul Taylor for like half hour with the music going. It's like, what are they doing? Let's get to the freaking Sender collection thing. We killed ourselves to get across town with the president there, and Paul Taylor with the lights going. I guess it was early in Tad Smith's thing. Was that 2012?
The big sale was in 2014.
2014.
I had gone to trial in summer of 2013, and the case got dismissed really quickly. We had this big celebration at the Viceroy in, I think, in Gila. And then 6 months later, my marriage fell apart. I was just like, wow, now I'm going to have to and I didn't have a prenup agreement. And so I shut my hedge fund down, and I had borrowed some money against my collection. And with the divorce, there was just no way.
There was no other choice.
There was no way that I was going to be able to keep that collection together. So, that was really that.
By the way, you know what? It's just stuff.
The Buddhist in me, it is just stuff. And that's why I don't really get, like, if people say, what's your favorite piece? I have a piece in my office that was in my grandmother's house that I just grew up with, that I don't know who the artist is. And I love that painting just because it has sentimental value, but it's not worth anything to me.
I have a favorite child.
Do you?
Yeah.
Well, I have 4 kids, and
I only have 1. So It's like, who's your favorite child? I can answer that one, but it'd be like asking who's your favorite kid.
Yeah. My dear, dear, dear friend, and I want to shout out to Gabby.
Gabby Palmieri rocks it.
She is the greatest, not only being a great person, a trustworthy person, but she knows her shit. And we talk about the art market, and I hear about.
So you've come back to the market.
Well, I always.
Well, not to the market. I would say
I'm always interested
to buying art. That's a difference.
I'm always interested in hearing about like what's going on. And I see that there's a lot of dislocation. There's a lot of great artists that are just there, for some reason, they're not popular anymore. And I think one of the reasons why I was successful in the 90s was because we were able to buy these artists that had, like a Richard Prince, Cindy Sherman. They had been making work since the 70s, and they had great dealers. They kind of went sideways, their prices, after the Japanese market blew up. Things went kind of sideways, and you were able to pick these artists up while the interest was kind of low. And I feel like we're going, if we're not there yet, there's going to be, we haven't had a recession in this country, a big recession since 2008. And I kind of feel like the timing will be right, that when I'm finally ready to retire from Wall Street and I build enough of a cash hoard here, that I would go back and I would start to fill in. Yeah.
To the artists of your generation, or would you start over with like new people?
I think I would buy what I liked, especially if the prices were, 50 to 75% off. And certainly if there was, not to sound Machiavellian, but if there was bid wanted type of situation because of a recession or stuff, that would be something that I would be certainly interested in and see myself wanting to get involved. But for me, like, I'm either all in, or it's very hard to just dabble in it.
When you were one of the 5 greatest collectors in the world, at least for contemporary art, at one time, it's a little hard to be just another guy, isn't it?
That's why going to the fair,
But that's what happened to like a lot of that generation of Don Mara and whatever. They were the guy.
Right.
And suddenly there were 50 guys with more money than them. And suddenly they're going like, well, look at me. I'm president of MoMA. And it's kind of like, so what? There's Elon Musk. We'd rather sell to him than, or whatever.
And that's the market really has become like, if you're not a billionaire, it's hard to, well, I guess they're just bidding on trophy art, so.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Some of them love the art.
Yeah. No, certainly there's all kinds of collectors out there, and, some people do an amazing job. But that being said, I feel like when I first started collecting in the 90s, it felt a little bit more localized, and now it definitely feels more global and like
you could understand everything kind of back then. You knew all the players, even if you didn't know them personally.
Yep.
You knew all the dealers.
Yep.
The curators, which museums. It was all manageable information.
100%. And, the thing that was great is the reason, we were buying some of these artists in depth were just the relationships that we had with a Barbara Gladstone, with a Sadie, with Sean Regan, Philomena Magers, and Monica, like great relationships where I trusted them and I respected their programs. Some of the other dealers that you don't respect the program as much. It's hard.
So how else do you see the art world? I'm not saying the art market, the art world we're at the end of, this is going to be our last episode of 2024, or it could be the first episode of 2025. How do you see the art world now?
Like I said, it's tough for me to comment on that because I'm just not really that involved. Like, it's Art Basel week. I'd rather stay at home and not be in the traffic. I'd rather not go to the parties. Like, been there, done that. I don't overly find it that interesting anymore.
Let me take you one last spot, which is, what about the museums and the philanthropy? Not so much even philanthropy, but focusing on the role of the museums, your relationship to museums, their role now versus then.
Well, I actually made a list of it. A huge Barney vitrine to Mocha, Hirshhorn, another piece to Mocha, a Vito Akanji piece to Mocha, a John Curran to MoMA. So I've donated numerous pieces to museums. That's one thing that I do actually like doing is if there's a good museum show, like I'm certainly interested in going to see like the Rouchet show or something like that. I mean, who wouldn't want to see that? So
that part gives you a buzz.
That is interesting to me. And look, like I said, I would love to get involved when I retire and do this full time again. But obviously do it a little bit differently. I don't think that whether buying in depth the way that I did versus what we talked about, buying one or two, like instead of having 20 Richard Princes, which I think I actually had, maybe like one or two would have been okay.
I have one friend, he was a museum chairman of the board. And I said, what he really should do is his collection should be one work of art. It's like, sell it all. I mean, he loves Cy Twombly. So it's like, get rid of everything and buy the best Cy Twombly you can find. And then if something better comes along, then you sell that one thing and your collection is just, so for me, that would be a dream collection. His wife looked at me like I was insane because they have like a big house. But to my mind, that could be like the ultimate art collection is one work. And obviously that would be the banana, right?
Yeah, the banana. It's amazing how much press the banana gets where it's like, come on, guys. How could you be that dumb?
I mean, listen, I love Maurizio's work. It's probably one of his weakest pieces.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, let's get off the banana. So
I came really close to buying.
I wanted to buy it here.
You remember the piece of the Pope getting hit by the meteor?
Yeah.
I came this close to buying that piece.
Segalo put in a sale at Christie's. It was in the
I
lobby. I remember seeing it in Venice. It cost like, can you imagine in Venice putting the friggin' Pope destroyed by meteor in like the Venice Biennale? I mean, he had guts.
Yeah. Well, I got a lot of flack for, I once had the Piss Christ, and I mean, people just could not.
One of my clients sold that. And that's the one thing that one of my best clients, he sold that. As I look back, I should have just told him, absolutely not. You can't do that. But it was hard to hang in his house. And
no, but I got a lot of crap from people when I couldn't even believe it.
When you bought it or when you sold it?
No, a couple of people that worked for me, they were so offended by it that how could I collect something like that? And I just never thought that way.
You still have that?
No.
That's one I would think that's a part of history.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 10 of them or different versions.
Yeah.
So it's not like you couldn't have it.
Yeah.
But that's one for me as an art advisor. I didn't put my foot down to my client and say, listen, it's just not worth it. You need to keep that, even if you're sticking it like in your closet by yourself.
Spiritual America,
that's the number one work.
Is also another one that's like, I had Spiritual America, and that was for a very long time, the holy grail.
It's the single most important work of the appropriation artist. It's the number one masterwork.
Is it still as coveted as it was?
It should be.
I mean, in today's world, it's a tough piece.
Sure, the Guggenheim wouldn't even show it except behind closed doors.
Yeah.
That was bad on them. But there was never a doubt that was like...
Yeah, no, I agree. But, everyone just wants nurse paintings now.
You can have both or, but there aren't that many things that are that level. Piss Christ.
Yeah, Serrano.
Do you know...
I had them both, and
do you know why it's called Spiritual America? Do you know where that comes from?
I feel like I did know that, but no, tell me.
So it comes from the Stieglitz photo.
Right.
And do you know what that photo is?
No.
So there's a famous photo. It's of a horse that's being bridled, almost like it's castrated. And that's from Spiritual America. It comes from Stieglitz and his gallery. So it relates to that. So it's not by accident that picture of Brooke Shields is called that.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly a commentary on culture, and
we tried to put it on the cover of our magazine. The printer wouldn't print it.
Yeah. Well, I can understand, why, but yes.
So the ones that got away, there aren't that many for me, but it's like,
I feel very, very good about the notion that a lot of the pieces that got away the first time, I'll have a chance again at some point.
Well, that'll be fun. You're going to have, I'm not saying that you had failures, but I think things not going well are great lessons for people in America. And it's like anybody who's never had something, and believe me, I've had my share. And when you hire people, what's the worst thing that happened? It's like, rather than somebody who's never had a problem, you're going to kill it the next time around.
I'm 55 and I feel, I'm the happiest I've been in my life.
Beautiful wife, 4 kids, great
Four
home.
kids, and
you're not a Jets fan. So how bad can it be?
I'm actually friends with my ex-wife's brother, and he's a Jets fan. It's nonstop fun.
Gabby, you talk about Gabby, and we'll end on this. She's a Jets fan, but her husband's a Patriots fan. And I think that would probably be a deal breaker for me, being my art advisor, that your husband's a Patriots fan.
Yeah. Well, believe it or not, growing up in the 70s, I was a Roger Staubach Cowboys fan. So I don't know why, but I was.
America's team. So any last words you'd like to give our audience?
Don't get divorced, don't get sued for $7 billion. But, look, at the end
Let me write this down. Don't get divorced. My wife will be glad to hear that. Don't get sued for how much?
It's not good. $7 billion. It's
billion.
Not good for keeping an art collection together. But that being said, the trite saying of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I feel just really optimistic, short of some of the things that are going on in the world that I can't control. Like what I can control, I feel great and feel really excited about the future. So,
Adam, thank you so much. I think there's a lot of meat on the bones of this conversation that I have to think about in the audience, of their hindsight and wisdom and becoming, now you're kind of mature from where you were.
When I first started buying art, I think I had the maturity of a 15-year-old.
Well, you can go back to that again eventually as an older one. So
maybe I'm 30 now or something.
Maybe
like
you're
that.
up to 30. When you're my age, immaturity is kind of charming.
Yeah.
At your age, still not, So thank you, Adam. And thank you to our listeners on the Baer Faxt Podcast. We'll see you again soon.
So that ends our very long and pretty informative conversation with Adam Sender. So Adam, big shout out for letting us come into your house and record these episodes. And once again, Arthur Analytics for sponsoring this episode of the Baer Faxt Podcast. So keep checking out Arthur Analytics. I've already told you in this podcast that it is going to be the big news and data story of 2025. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Baer Faxt Podcast. Today's episode is hosted by Josh Baer. Our executive producer is Luyang Zhang. Our head of content is Boliang Shen. And I'm Patrick Hill, our associate editor. Our audio editor for this episode is Auntie Lame. Check back soon for future episodes as we unpack the inner workings of the global art industry through exclusive, candid interviews with key players in the business, as they offer their perspectives on art and the market in the US, Asia, Europe, and beyond.